Hi guys, welcome to VCode series. If you are new to web development and looking to learn basics, this video is for you. This video will focus on essential web development concepts right from web client, web server, protocols, front-end development and back-end development. First comes web client. We use these web clients everywhere in our day-to-day life. In simple, web clients or applications we use over internet to perform some action or to get some information. It's no wonder if we say it's part of our life because we use many web clients like web browsers, banking applications, games, food apps, email and messaging apps and many more. Next comes web server. Web server is a hardware or software that delivers web content to the users over the internet. For an example, I'm a visitor, I visit a web page and search for something. The web client forms a request object based on my search and sends the request object to the web server. Then server processes the request object, fetch corresponding files and send back the results to the web client. Next comes protocols. Protocols is a set of rules and regulations for communicating data in a network. In a network, there could be different kinds of softwares and hardwares. Each should understand the communication. So in simple, protocol is like a common language so that systems can understand the communication over the internet. The rules in protocols are related to how data is sent, received and processed in a communication. This concept may seem intransparent or difficult to understand. Don't worry, once you start working in a real-time environment, you will see in an application there are different kinds of layers. In each layer, while configuring the file, relevant protocols according to the end user, end system and the requirement and the version, the protocols will be applied. Let's see how a simple request and response handled between a client and server. In this picture, I have demonstrated how a client communicating to server. As a first step, client wants to know where the server is located. For example, if I want to send a mail to a person, I want to know their ID. I want to know their address. So for this, there will be a server called a domain name server. Domain name server holds the IP address of all other servers. So as a first step, client wants to know the IP address. So it sends request to the DNS server. The DNS server sends the corresponding IP address of the server to the client back. And then there will be some intermediate servers too. So before initiating request, first the server wants to know is the client have authorization to access the resource because it cannot send data to everyone. It wants to check the client have the authorization. So the client send request connection to the intermediate server. Intermediate server then verifies the authorization with the server. Fifth step, if everything is okay, if all the authorization have been checked, server sends respond OK connection to the client. Otherwise, it will send the client has no authority. And then client send request object for the resource to the server. As a final step, server fulfill the response by fetching the resources. That could be anything, HTML, XML, PDF, JSON, anything. The server sends the response object to the client back. In between these communication, as I said, protocols will be used. And one more information. If you see in the picture, the first step, requesting IP address. It's not required for every time. It's only for the first time. For subsequent request, these information will be stored on the client side as catch object or session object. Likewise, the verify authentication step is not happened for every time. Client information will be stored on server side session that will be used later for subsequent requests. Next one, front-end development. It's the process of developing user interface that facilitates user to interact with. We can also say it is client-side development. So here, user interface is a web page. To create web page, basically we need to use HTML, CSS scripts. Let's discuss these elements one by one. Firstly, HTML. HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. First of all, why we call it as markup language means a markup language is used to design, format and present a content in a web page. we use it for designing web pages. Actually, the markup language tells the browser how to present text, images, and multimedia objects on a web page. And the term hypertext is the link between web pages. We can see hypertext navigate us to some other web page when user click on it. Like other programming languages, HTML also has set of rules, but that's not too strict. HTML is not case sensitive. Let's see that briefly in upcoming sessions. Next comes CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheet. We all know websites are made up of HTML, scripts, and CSS. HTML, we just saw, it's used to define structure of a page. We can also format contents of page using HTML, but it has only limited features. But using CSS, you can achieve that to a great extent. CSS helps to define color, fonts, positioning, and even you can do a little bit of animation in a web page. We can write CSS in 3 ways. First one is inline CSS. It's used to apply unique style to a single HTML element. You can write styles inside of element using style attribute. Second one is internal CSS. Here you can write style inside of head section in HTML page within style tag. Like this, you can write for all the elements of the page in the style section. And the final one is external CSS. You can keep style sheet in a separate file and refer that wherever you want. I'm having a number of pages in a website. I want to follow same styles for all the pages. In that case, you can use the external CSS and refer to HTML files wherever you want. And the final element is scripting. In general, websites can be static or dynamic. Static web pages displays constant content to every user. It does not get any input from the user, so it's not dynamic. It's not interactive. For example, landscape pages, newsletter contents, and blogs. Dynamic web pages gets input from the user, and based on the user location, timing, and other inputs, it displays different content. For example, e-commerce sites, banking sites, online service booking sites. So to make a page interactive, dynamic, and to add some functionalities, scripting is required. Many scripting languages are available. Example with this form where I applied scripting. Here, this is a simple form. Full name, a text box is here, date of birth, calendar input is here. Calendar input is available as HTML element, so we don't need scripting for that. Then country, a drop down is here. State, a drop down. City, a text box. Phone number and a text box. And finally, submit button. In date of birth, we can choose some anything. Yeah, we can choose some date of birth here. Country. If I select a country, according to the country, state should be populated. If I'm giving Canada, according to that, state should be populated here. So for this, scripting is required. In city, type something here. In phone number, I should give a phone number here. If I try to give alphabet, it should throw me error. So that is validation. I have to do that using scripting. So for populating this drop down, for validating the phone number, if I'm giving email ID, I have to check the email ID is in correct format. So for these validations and populating things, scripting is required. Validation we see in this form can be done both on client side as well as server side. If the validation is simple, for example, if it's a email check, number range, password length format, mandatory fields, these are simple validations. This can be done on client side. For some fields, validation should be done on server side because that involves user data. For example, login credentials, is user already exists, is mail ID already exists, like this. Backend development. Backend development completely focus on handling user requests, application logic, DB operations like how data is stored and retrieved from database, and hosting application, logging, and many more activity. As a web developer, we must know all basics right from front-end development. Choosing a server-side technology is very significant part because that's going to be our career path. During my studies, VB script, ASP were part of my syllabus, so I chose the .NET and worked in that. Similarly, many server-side technologies are available. Please do research and choose your interest area. So if you're going to choose .NET, definitely this is the right place for you. From upcoming videos, I'll post content related to web technologies right from HTML to .NET, and for DB I choose SQL. Let's wind up the video here. Thank you for watching. If it's really useful, please subscribe, and if you have any doubt, comment. I'll catch you on next video. Thank you.